Dr. John Dee. General overview of Dr. Dee. John Dee, July 13, 1527, 1608 or 1609, was an English mathematician, astronomer, astrologer, teacher, occultist, and alchemist. 4. He was the court astronomer for, and advisor to, Elizabeth I, and spent much of his time on alchemy, divination, and Hermetic philosophy. As an antiquarian, he had one of the largest libraries in England at the time. As a political advisor, he advocated the foundation of English colonies in the New World to form a British Empire, a term he is credited with coining. Dee eventually left Elizabeth's service and went on a quest for additional knowledge in the deeper realms of the occult and supernatural. He aligned himself with several individuals who may have been charlatans, traveled through Europe, and was accused of spying for the English crown. Upon his return to England, he found his home and library vandalized. He eventually returned to the Queen's service, but was turned away when she was succeeded by James I. He died in poverty in London, and his gravesite is unknown. The occultist Aleister Crowley considered himself the reincarnation of Dee, but also Eliphas Levi. Crowley, like John Dee, was deeply involved with British intelligence. Dr. John Dee is probably, other than King Solomon himself, one of the greatest occultists mankind has ever known. His Mortlake library was the largest in the country before it was vandalized, and created an enormous, sometimes ruinous personal expense. It was seen as one of the finest in Europe, perhaps second only to that of Davao. As well as being an astrological and scientific advisor to Elizabeth and her court, he was an early advocate of colonization of North America, envisioning a British Empire stretching across the North Atlantic. Yes, this is huge. Dee more or less came up with the idea of a British Empire. He was a Merlin type of charter. Was Prospero based on John Dee? In Shakespeare's play The Tempest, the character Prospero uses magical powers to intimidate his enemies and to manipulate the natural world. The character may have been inspired by the Elizabethan mathematician, astrologer, and book collector John Dee. The famous poet Edmund Spenser may be referring to Dee in his poem The Faerie Queene, 1596. What was John Dee famous for? John Dee was a brilliant mathematician, antiquary, and astrologer. During the reign of Queen Elizabeth I, Dee was well connected with intellectuals in Europe and believed in English imperialism. Elizabeth called him my philosopher. But in reality, he was a spy and occultist. First and foremost, the occult was his passion. The film Elizabeth, The Golden Age, 2007, has two scenes in which Queen Elizabeth consults Dr. Dee, played by David Threlfall. Do not miss this film, for it is an excellent representation of the Elizabethan era. Henry VIII was the first monarch to introduce a new state religion to the English. In 1532, he wanted to have his marriage to his wife, Catherine of Aragon, annulled. When Pope Clement VII refused to consent to the annulment, Henry VIII decided to separate the entire country of England from the Roman Catholic Church. This would soon lead to tremendous battle between the Catholics and Protestants in England. Some 183 Catholics were executed under the anti-Catholic legislation during the whole of Elizabeth's reign, and many more imprisoned or exiled. Torture was also employed, in later years, under the supervision of the notorious sadist, Richard Topcliffe. But the Catholics certainly wanted to kill Queen Elizabeth I. She was, of course, under the protection of Dr. John Dee and Sir Francis Walsingham, the fathers of the mighty MI6 spy agency. Sir Francis Walsingham was principal secretary to Queen Elizabeth I of England from December 20, 1573 until his death, and is popularly remembered as her spymaster. Born to a well-connected family of gentry, Walsingham attended Cambridge University and traveled in continental Europe before embarking on a career in law at the age of 20. A committed Protestant, during the reign of the Catholic Queen Mary I of England, he joined other expatriates in exile in Switzerland and northern Italy until Mary's death and the accession of her Protestant half-sister, Elizabeth. Walsingham rose from relative obscurity to become one of the small coterie who directed the Elizabethan state, overseeing foreign, domestic, and religious policy. He served as English ambassador to France in the early 1570s and witnessed the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre. As principal secretary, he supported exploration, colonization, the use of England's maritime strength, and the plantation of Ireland. He worked to bring Scotland and England together. Overall, his foreign policy demonstrated a new understanding of the role of England as a maritime Protestant power with intercontinental trading ties. He oversaw operations that penetrated Spanish military preparation, gathered intelligence from across Europe, disrupted a range of plots against Elizabeth, and secured the execution of Mary, Queen of Scots. Dee and Walsingham were, in my opinion, the real power behind the Queen. Michael A. Hoffman writes in Secret Societies and Psychological Warfare. The materialization of this this diabolic nightmare, was inseminated by a millennia-old esoteric current, fine-tuned and propelled by England's royal astrologer and secret agent, John Dee, codenamed 007 during the Elizabethan age, for full viral materialization in our 2001 age. The process began with the number 7 and culminates in a Hermetic game of hazard or chance. 21. End of part 1 of my series on Dr. John Dee.
Been dazed and confused for so long it's not true. Wanted a woman, never bargained for you. Lots of people talk